So we've talked about the Greek concept of sin because we're trying to read difficult texts and everyone apparently is a sinner. And apparently sinners are people that don't follow your religion, and everyone didn't follow their religion when the religion was invented. So everyone's a sinner, especially people from foreign countries. But we've got the Greek language, and we know that a sin is when you miss the mark, you miss what you're aiming for, right? So apparently, the idea of sin comes from Aristotle's Nicomachean Ethics. Um, let's go to three. The three footnotes says, "Does happiness come from self? Is it a thing that can be learned or acquired by habituation or discipline of some other kind? Does it come in the way of divine dispensation or even in the way of chance?" So if you're not sinning, you should be happy. You're living a virtuous life. You're following the classical virtues according to Aristotle: temperance, prudence, um, courage, and then righteousness, which is a weird word that's using there because I thought righteousness is what's right, but for him, a virtue is finding the medium between two extremes. It's living a balanced life. It's not saying that you should be humble, overly humble, bowing down, and you shouldn't be I'm the shit, I'm arrogant, but you should be high minded. If you're super talented, you should know that you're talented, but doesn't mean you need to show off. So the most virtuous person would be the philosopher king. It's a warrior king, but a very virtuous person who is very mindful of reality. So let's just read this. Before though, Nietzsche, famous philosopher, God is dead, or Nietzsche, whatever. Everyone has a different way to say his name. He had a book called Beyond Good and Evil, and I guess that would be relate to questions that Aristotle dealt with. So of the question of things, good and evil, that they partly depend on our own effort and partly do not, and that according to the teachings of Christ, but not as Aristotle thinks from the treatise on the fourth Psalm, at the words many say, who will show us the good things. Seeing that there is so much discussion as to what things are good, what evil, some affirming that good things and the contrary do not depend on our own efforts, pleasure, for instance, as they declare being a good thing, trouble an evil thing, while others identify good and evil with things dependent on our own efforts only. For they say that good things are the virtues only and virtuous actions, and that evil things are the vices and vicious actions. And a third set of thinkers unite the two views and tell us that good and evil things partly depend on our own efforts, partly do not. No wonder if distracted by these rhetorical arguments that are just all about the words, probably the majority of believers longing to learn what are really good things cry out with the psalmist, who will show us the good things. That the good things naturally depend upon our own efforts. Everybody who accepts the passage in the gospel where the judgment is described would unhesitantly, they'd agree with it. I'm just going to keep going with the top here. And that is also good, which proceeds from the good man out of his heart, which comes from the good man out of his heart, as the Savior says, the good man out of the good treasure of his heart brings forth that which is good, and in general, every fruit of a good tree, because it depends on a man's own efforts, is a good thing, such as love, peace, joy, long-suffering, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, meekness, self-control, and contraries. And the contraries are evil things. The opposite of the fruits of the Spirit to him are what counts as evil. And so he's giving you new virtues. So he says love, peace, joy, long suffering. Why is it long suffering? I have to go look it up in Greek. So the word for long suffering is macrothomia, which for me it would be macroamia, because clearly I don't pronounce the thaw, unless it's a certain type of word. An Egyptian would never pronounce the cough unless it's a certain type of word, but clearly they do pronounce the thaw nowadays. In case you're curious, it does say karpos to pneumatos, which is fruits of the spirit. Esten agape, kata, so love. Kata is joy, which kata, like we were talking about, like it's a bad word. But we were saying like kata in Spanish is face, but it's a bad word in Arabic. Kata. It's irene, peace, macro omia, which for me, like I think long suffering has to do with your amia. So if it's something type of family, like we're saying a long, tall, deep, far distance, long family, and do I have like that type of family? My family's different. So in case you're wondering, Apollon wrote Galatians. He's the one that talks about the fruits of the Spirit. He's writing to the church in Galatia or Galatica or something, I don't know. So Christos is kindness, agathosune, which it could be agaosane, is goodness, pistis is faith, prautes is meekness, prautes. Egkrateia is self-control. So is self-control like a part of like is like it's a Greek virtue? I think it is, and that's why it's easy to believe that one. I'll start reading at the bottom right of me. And if according to the teachings of Christ, there is something good and evil, and we must still look for it in things independent of our choice, and it should prove to be independent of our efforts, we shall on further investigation very quickly show. But at any rate, things so called by those who unite what is within our choice with what is not could not be good and evil, for they think that some good things pertain to the soul, others to the body, and that others are external, and similarly with evil things. And in respect of the soul, they speak of virtue and virtuous conduct, or vice and vicious conduct, as concerns the body, or of health and vigor and beauty, or disease and sickliness and deformity as regards external wealth, good birth and reputation, or poverty, humble origin and disgrace. So he's explaining to you like how broad terms can get. So we have talked about like separation and like what it means to be separated, like to separate from your mother's womb, and that's like he's like talked about this concept so much, and he says like Paul got separated from his mother's womb, and like he took the image of the son. And like this guy went out, and what happened to him? He got like put in prison like that many times. He was in chains. Like they chained him up 3 different times, I think, because it says he got beaten with the rod. I think he got chained up, and it's a mistranslation. And when it says 5 times he got whipped, like Isus, if you've seen the Passion of the Christ, like you probably don't want to see it. Like he got whipped once, like Paul got whipped that many times, and I think it's because he had a thorn in his side, like he had a boyfriend, like he was gay, and they knew it. So he's the one they'll whip for sure. The black thing points to the black thing on the top left. Look where it starts. Perhaps then it was under these conditions that God separated him from his mother's womb. God saw the cause of the just separation, these that Paul would buffet his body and bring it into bondage, because he feared lest having preached to others to himself might be rejected. Because of like what Paul had done in his past lives, he was that afraid. But like when it says it was a just separation to like put Paul into the world, like because Paul's an angel now, we're thinking, right? Because he's a clone. We're talking about Apollon, which is Apollo, which is Paul from the Bible, which is like a guy that's lived a lot of times, and everyone would have thought like, oh gosh, Apollo's back. I hate Apollo. So dikaiosune would be the word, I guess, for justice, and like what generally like what's just, what's dikaio is like what's good. So like if you say like, well, it's just, it's good. In reality, like what's just, like according to me, like based on my reading of Socrates, is like what like God decides is just, or like what like the strongest possible being decides is just for everyone in that situation. Like you, like the Catholic Church got to decide this is what's just. Like we're all afraid of sex. But the question is, like, is there a difference between what's just and what's right? Like, there's a different word for it. So, like, when Paul got sent down, like, was it right that that guy got sent to get beat that many times? Like, 5 times got whipped with 40 times, like you got whipped 40 times 5 times. That's not right.